Hi, everyone. Welcome to Visions du Real and talk number 2, titled From Real Places to Imaginary Spaces. My name is Jordan Cronk. I'm a film critic and programmer based in Los Angeles. I'm really happy to be moderating this talk with the directors of 5 films at the festival this year, 5 world premieres. The films are called If You See Her, Say Hello, Sortes, Where We Are, Dry Winter, and Night Snorkeling. Some are shorts, some are features, medium length films. So everything is represented. And we have about 55 minutes, so we'll jump right into the talk. There's many things I'd like to touch on in these films. One of the things, considering the title of the talk, I thought we could start with the places and the locations where each of these films are shot. They're all in very unique places. Maybe we'll start with the directors of If You See Her, Say Hello, Oscar Zhang and Pyun. You guys shot this film in northern China. Can you just tell me a little bit about the personal connection to this place? I think it deals with Oscar's family and father, right? Can you just tell me a little bit about the region and what it means to you?
So actually, not my family friend is we met. So we were both studying overseas, and we met this friend also staying overseas and for a long time, and we were feeling homesick. One night we were just talking about hometown, and that friend, because I'm from like East Coast, like a big city in China, and then so for me and Hyun, she's from Korea, which is also a big city, Seoul. So for us to define hometown is pretty much simple. Like the two cities is our hometown in a way. But this friend, she was talking about her hometown is somewhere doesn't exist anymore, and it's somewhere in northwest in China, and that made us like really curious about what kind of place is that. So we pretty much heard the place through her talking, through her memory. Then 1 year later, we got to see the place with our eyes, the actual physical place. Yeah, that was how we got to know the location.
Right. So the photos that we see in the film are photos from this person's childhood. Is that correct?
Actually, it's the photos that we took during the shoot.
Okay.
Well, we thought it's interesting because if you watch our film, we mix a lot of different media to portray this single place. And then we thought different media have very different temporal connotation. Because, for example, this still photographies, if you see those images with narration, then you feel something past, something that happened very long time ago, although it was shot by us. So
right.
Yeah, that was what we tried to achieve.
Okay. And Monica, your film Sortes is shot in a region of Portugal called Serra da Serpa. Can you tell me about your connection with the space, but also maybe the political aspects of it, maybe?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, Serra de Serpa is in Alentejo region in south of Portugal, and it's actually the hometown of my mother and all her family behind her, and so I basically already had this familiar connection to it, and I used to spend there like vacations and so on. And also my grandfather used to live with us, which was very attached to that place. So my initial connection to the place was through the storytelling of my grandfather, which maybe makes a connection to our theme of the talk, because in my case, I think I went from an imaginary space to the real place.
Right.
From the storytelling to the actual connection to the reality, which is more pragmatic, perhaps, than in stories.
Right.
And yes, it's a particular place because something happened about 100 years ago, in 1906. This was the biggest common land in Portugal, and it was decided that it should be split and given by luck, by chance, to anybody that lived around that area. So actually, sortes means sort means luck. And also each parcel of land that was given by luck became a sort. So it's a unity measure there, because it was given by luck, by lottery. It became not just luck, kind of a fortune, a destiny, became also this idea of unity of land. So everybody got a parcel of land where they built their own mount, their own ramder's house, and made subsistence farming. So 100 years after, this is what Sorge is showing, is actually like what happened with this kind of utopic idea of like sharing land with everybody, and the reality today with desertification and also the people moving away, and and what is happening there, and also the cultural heritage that was connected to this place and lifestyle that is actually disappearing. So it's also a try to encapsulate it.
Right. And Amélie, your film Where We Are was shot in a region called Fos-sur-Mer in southern France. I'm probably not getting the name correct, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about the region. Similar to Oscar and his film, it kind of deals with pollution, or like an area where the refineries and things like that have changed the kind of the landscape. I'm just curious if you can talk about this region and how you knew about it and your connection to it.
So Fos-sur-Mer is it's not so far away from Marseille.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also next to the delta of the Rhône. It's a big river. She's doing throughout the France, so it's a quite important place also with the boats. And there is, it's like a cocktail of so much different industry. Most of the raffinery, but there is also IKEA, for example. So they say that it's actually one of the most polluting places in France and also in Europe. But at the same time, there is also lots of nature. It's next to the Camargue, and the Camargue is one of these most wild place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really paradoxal. And I heard about this actually on the radio, on the French radio, and also in some newspaper, and from people of my surroundings, of my family, which were invested not in the construction, but again the construction during the late 60s and beginning 70s. They were already asking, what will happen with this industry, if it will be really correct with environment. So then I've been there actually with a friend which is journalist. It was a bit curiosity also, and we had some interview, and then I've been there so much time, and I stay for more than so fast 2 months. That I could really know this place and understand how the people are living there and not judging in a kind of way.
Right. All right, thank you. And Dry Winter by Kyle Davis. It's an Australian film. The film was shot in Cowell, which is in South Australia, I believe. Can you tell us about this region, Kyle, and your connection to it? It's a very, very unique space.
Yeah, that's like I'm not from there or anything. I'm just from the main city in South Australia.
Mhm.
But the cinematographer, we were kind of looking for this place that was like a seaside town or something like that, and he had family friends that lived there. So we kind of took like a trip there, the same before, and kind of found this whole like, you know, obviously the movie took off from there, where we thought like it was just going to be this little thing. But yeah, it's just kind of like I think a lot of people just drive through it. You know, it's like there's a lot of places along that, and there's nice spots along the Eyre Peninsula. It's like very touristy, some of it, but then Cal, I think, gets a bit, you know, left behind. So like your first thing when you go in, like we kind of thought, you know, how are you going to make this look not dramatic, but, you know, like impressive or something, where you see just a main strip of a town. But I think once we spent a lot of time there, you kind of get to know people a bit more and see more of the place. It became a lot more interesting.
Right.
So yeah.
And the final film we're going to be talking about today is called Night Snorkeling, Japanese film by Hirofumi Nakamoto and now Yoshigai, who are here with the translator. Can you guys also tell me just a little bit about the areas where you shot the film? It seems like it might have been shot in multiple places. I think the only one maybe identified is called Misaki Fishing Port, but are there others? Or if that's the only one, can you tell me a little bit about that area?
はい、この質問については僕が答えます。撮影地になった三浦岬漁港を含む、三浦半島は東京からすごい近いところにあるんですが、豊かな自然環境があります。で、3年ほど前に私はこの半島にある小さな博物館で、ここに住むたくさんの生き物の写真や剥製を見たんですね。で、それがとても魅力的で、この場所のことをもっと知りたいと思って移住することに決めました。このあたりで一旦。
So let me answer the question. So that this Miura Peninsula, which includes this Misaki fishing port, is very close to Tokyo, but has a rich natural environment. And about like 3 years ago, I visited a small museum there on the peninsula and saw a lot of photos and stuffed animals of many of the creatures that lived there. And I was very fascinated by it. So I decided to move here to learn more about the place.
それで、三浦半島はすごい小さな半島なんですけれども、その中には森や海、農村や漁港など、いろんな要素が詰まっていて、で、森とか湿地とか干潟とか海までがこう連続して残されている、すごく貴重な場所っていうのもあります。
And this is a small peninsula, but it's filled with all kinds of elements like forests, oceans, farming villages, and fishing ports. And also, this is a very rare environment where forest, wetland, tidal flats to the ocean are all connected in one line. So I think it's a very precious place.
ただし、すごい楽園のような場所っていうわけではなくて、すごくやっぱり都市が近いんですね。で、米軍とか自衛隊とかの基地とかっていうのもその半島の中にあって、で、人間とその自然っていうのがやっぱりぶつかり合う、矛盾を抱えた場所でもあります。そういう意味ではさっきおっしゃっていたアメリーさんの星するメールとの問題意識も共通意識としては持ってます。で、僕は最後まで言っちゃいますね。はい、僕はここが人間が生きていくっていうことのために、その何が本当に必要なのかっていうことを考え続けるために最適な場所の一つであるというふうに思って、ここの場所を選びました。
However, this place is not necessarily a paradise. It's close to the city, and it's also a place of different contradictions, where humans and nature, desire of human and nature clash, and there are cities nearby, and also U.S. military base and Japanese self-defense force base is nearby. So it has a lot of elements put together. So I think this place is also similar to the city that Amélie shoot the film. It has a lot of different conflicts between humans and nature. And some people want to promote urbanization while others want to preserve nature. So I believe this is one of the best places to keep thinking about what is really necessary for human beings to live and what I can do for the environment.
Right. Well, maybe to circle back to the beginning, one thing, it kind of touches on what you guys were just talking about as well, but if you see here, Say Hello, Sortes, and Where We Are, they all kind of deal with how various industrial practices have affected the landscape. And in the case of If You See Her, Say Hello, and Sortes, there's been a kind of an exodus from the region for a lot of the former inhabitants, I guess. So maybe to go back to Oscar, and he, can you tell me a little bit about the oil drilling industry there, and was that something you guys knew going in, and just about using that aspect in the film, how that came about?
Yeah, it's actually a pretty unique town where that town is. So basically, the friend was growing up in this place, which was operated by a state-owned oil drilling enterprise. So in China, all this energy is pretty much state-owned or massive operations. And they came in, I believe in the 70s, brought different like 50,000, 60,000 people, I believe, into the region. And overnight, they built a city in the middle of nowhere just to drill oil. And it was pretty much surrounded by mountains, and it's in the region where the landscape is pretty much yellow earth, northwest part of China.
Right.
So you have pretty much nothing around, but the city is was the most prosperous town in the region. They got everything, all the supplies, and young people got to buy the most fashionable clothes, even where the surrounding areas would not be able to get access to. What's interesting is the place was abandoned in, I think, early 2000 when the oil is drained. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the surrounding area, because of the recent economical growth in China, the surrounding areas has become prosperous. And there is a adjacent town right next to this abandoned city. It's actually really growing into like a big scale county or little city, which got all the modernity to it. That's actually where we filmed in these both places. We would stay in the new town at night, and we would travel to the ghost town, the abandoned space, during the day and film. Right. You want to talk?
No. Well, Monica, for Sortes, you mentioned before, like Sortes are the actual like areas where individual crops were raised until, I guess, like bigger industries came in and took away some of those jobs for people. Is that how it worked, or can you tell us a little bit about what led to people needing to leave this area?
Well, it's a bit more complex than that, I would say. So in a sense, like in a way, like not in Serra de Serpa, but around Serra de Serpa, there are a lot of big profit-driven multinational agricultural projects.
Right.
And of course, in a way, it's impossible to try to compete with, as a small subsistence farmer, with such companies in the socioeconomic conditions of today. So there's that, in a sense, but at the same time, it's also a complicated situation in which, like, this idyllic idea of giving a little piece of land to everyone in a place where it's very dry and so on, kind of made that they themselves, because of the difficulties of life, had to make agriculture in a way that they can survive from it, and therefore also they were already like exploiting the soil in a way and making it less rich. So right. So it was a mix of various scenarios, and also climate change is affecting the place as well. So it's a mix of many things, and I would put a big part of it into today's economic situation, because you cannot have one place which is living by its own rules, even if it's something which is very egalitarian, like this idea, but then they are connected to the world and they cannot compete with big pharma, farming industry.
Well, how does that play into like your family's history? I know the film is dedicated to your grandfather. Were they farmers? Were they affected by this firsthand?
Yes. So my grandfather and his brother, they had a house there, and my mom was born in one of these earth-made montes. And then my grandmother died very early when she was 28. And it's, if you have seen these places, they have very little infrastructure, and at the time even more. So you have like a well somewhere to get water and no electricity and so on. And nowadays they all go with cars everywhere, but it was not that easy back then. So my grandfather was alone with 3 kids on this mountain, and it was very hard to do the farming and take care of the kids and everything in the mountain. So they left for the city. But it's also a bit one example of many, many other people who did the same way as my grandfather did. Like since the last decades, people have been moving out. But the film is more about those that manage to stay or are stubborn enough to stay. And yeah, so it's about them.
Right.
And also what it used to be, but it's also about the reality of today. It's also about the present.
Right. And Amélie, for where we are, I mean, you touched on the kind of the pollution that's affected this area because of these chemical plants. But maybe you can expand on it a little bit as far as, I mean, there's high cancer rates and things of that nature, but also the factories are kind of the main source of jobs for a lot of people in the area. Can you maybe just talk about that dynamic and how you wanted to kind of depict that in the film?
Okay. So actually in the film, I didn't wanted to talk about this fact, and I don't say this directly because I think we can imagine this with the images. So I didn't need it to say it again. But yeah, the industry, the problem is that it's quite old industry, and they should actually repair or do it new, but it's also lots of money, and the state or friends don't want to invest so much money, but also don't want to lose this industry.
Right.
So they let it like this. And before, I think that, yes, it was industry which offer lots of jobs for the people which are living there. Yeah, now I think it's really less people. So of course in Fos-sur-Mer, in Miramas, in the city, in the surrounds, lots of people are working for this industry, but not so much like früher, like before. Yeah, also the young people which are living there, for them it's always like a plan B in their life. They say, okay, if I don't manage to study this or I don't know what to do, then I can still work to the industry.
Right.
So they're also actually quite proud of this industry because they also like it. And they have lots of advantage to live in Fos-sur-Mer. They don't have taxes. There is so much sport activity or other stuff for children. You can build a house with a, yeah, the place is actually just cheaper.
Right. Well, it's kind of interesting because you see like the beaches there right next to the refineries and also like an amusement park. And then you also have images of like dead fish in the film. Was these something you knew that there was the proximity of the refineries to just like public spaces where I'm assuming a lot of this youth or young people are living and doing their daily routines? Is that something you knew going in, or was that a discovery as you started filming?
I knew about this proximity, but I mean, I didn't really know how it was. So when I see that, it was really, yeah, next to it. But also, I mean, it's also smelling really strong. So you still feel, even when you don't see the industry, you still feel it in a kind of way. But this proximity, you kind of, how to say, you lose it after some weeks, because you don't really see it anymore. So
sure. And Kyle, to go back to Dry Winter, I feel like your film maybe has the political aspects of it are maybe a little not as obvious, or they're a little under the radar a little bit, but I feel like it's still there. Like you depict two characters or a little community of young people who aren't doing much with their lives, kind of just hanging out and doing odd jobs and going to parties and stuff like that. I don't know if maybe you can talk a little bit about the economic aspects of a young person in South Australia, if that is something you were interested in depicting, because it seems like there's that aspect to it where these young people maybe don't have the opportunities that they could or should.
Yeah, it was like, I think we didn't start with that concept of, like looking at it in a political economic thing, but it did obviously pop up like when we went to do all the casting, and we thought, we'll film like, we'll get all these young people, whatever. And then we asked, and I think the school had one student in year 12, so like in their final, like 18 years old. So, and everyone else had just gone already. Like, I think you either end up, some people move to, Adelaide, where I live, like to the big cities. And then there's also a lot of kind of local industries that I think you go into, before you finish school or anything like that. Like there's a lot of oyster farming and things like that. So there's stuff to keep people there. But I think for people that aren't going to go down like a trade path or, work in that kind of on the farms, or if there's like a steel, like iron ore and all that, one town over, so people go there. But if you're not interested in that, like Andy, the main character, and Courtney, they're kind of, we're drifting a little bit. When we met them, Andy's a chef and no one was coming through for tourism, so that shut down. And he was like, I got nothing to do for a month, so I'll be in the movie. And it was quite like, there's that, it's definite thing where like, and everyone's moved on since, like everyone who's in the movie isn't in Cal anymore. So everyone tends to do something else.
Well, one thing I found interesting about your film is that, I mean, while watching it, it seemed to me, just as a viewer with no context for what I was getting into, it seemed like maybe this was a personal story for you or this area. But then, I noticed that you have a screenwriter, Bridget McDonald. I'm just curious if this is something that she, like a community that she was aware of, or how did her role come into play?
No, we're all kind of the same thing. I'm born in South Africa, so I got nothing to do with that area. But even still, like Bridget and Gear, the cinematographer and producer, we're all from Adelaide or live in Adelaide. But we had just like a script where we thought, not like stereotypes, but it was just a very kind of basic outline of, things that we might like to see or that we'd kind of imagined to be in these places. And so then the whole thing was that we would go there and bring on real people in real locations, and it would be kind of transformed in that sense. So it wasn't, we had like an initial idea, but it was pretty uninformed, to be honest. We only had like things from the news or what you see on trips when you go through, but not really like a, concrete understanding of the place or a personal connection in that sense.
Right.
So.
And to go back to night snorkeling, you guys already kind of touched on the, I don't know, political or cultural importance or dynamic of that area. But can you tell me maybe about the personal, just about night snorkeling or snorkeling in general? Is this something you guys are in the film? Is this something you guys normally do? Is this a hobby? I'm curious about the conception, the initial idea for the film, just if it was based in just your reality of what you guys like to do.
じゃあ、映画を撮るきっかけになったことは少し私からお話ししようかなと思います。まず、そもそもどうして夜の海に潜ろうかって思ったかっていうと、私が大橋角屋ダンサーズっていうダンスカンパニーのダンス作品の舞台映像を撮るっていう仕事をしていました。で、そのダンス作品の原作になっていたのが、この25時のバカンスっていう漫画だったんですけど、こうナイトシーそう夜の海を舞台にした漫画ですごく本当に美しく夜の海が描かれていて、私今まで夜の海ってすごくこう危険で入ってはいけないものというふうに教えられていたから、一生入るつもりなんかなかったんですけど、ちょっとこの漫画を読んで実際夜の海ってどうなってるのかなってすごく見てみたくなりました。で、それで
はい、いいですか? So let me explain why we decided to make this film. So this was actually, I was asked to make a video to be projected as part of the show put together by this dance company called Ohashi Kakuya and Dancers, and I was part of the team as a videographer, and that they were making this dance piece based on this manga comic. それもう一回見せてもらえるといいか。That's titled Vacation at 25 o'clock, and it depicts this very deep, dark ocean at night, very, very beautifully in the comic. So this is the inspiration for the dance piece as well. So I wanted to explore what is really about this night, sea at night. And you know, when I was children, I was always told that going into the ocean at night is dangerous thing. You should never do it. So I was, thinking I would never do it in my life, but we decided to just try going into the water.
それで海に住んでいる人で誰が一緒に行ってくれるかなと思ったときに、中本くんは適任だなと思って声をかけました。
And but I needed a company to go into the ocean with me, and I thought Hirofumi would be the best partner.
Right. We'll circle back again, maybe to Oscar and he again. You were mentioning the various media you guys are using in the film. There's still photography. You guys have original live action footage, and then you also have like a male and female voiceover where it's kind of a conversation between the two of them. I'm just curious how you guys conceptualized the narrative as it is, where this person's kind of recounting their memories of their childhood. I'm just curious how you guys came to the different media aspects, and then how you decided to play it out. If it was like a script you guys or a scenario you had written out, or how that came into being.
So in the beginning, I think we didn't know how this film will end, and we just had a list of places that we want to shoot. So our treatment in a way was just list of places. And so first day we go to this abandoned theater, and second day we go to abandoned swimming pool, and then we just went there, and then we tried to fill the space, and then we were playing together basically with other crew as well. And then while shooting all these spaces, we talked to different local people, especially he talked to a lot of different people, and then we gather different memories. And so in a way, the narrative in our film is not just a personal, one person's story. I think it's more of a collective memory.
Sometimes fantasy as well, because like when we try to gather memories from the locals, and they would tell us something that sounds realistic, but sometimes the story morphs into something like there's a white tiger in the wood nearby, and if you see the tiger, you get sick. And so we collected a lot of like
voices.
voices, memories, and that kind of became the base of our narrative, or the spirit of our narrative in a way.
Right. Amélie, I have a question about kind of how you put together the storytelling aspects of your film as well. Much of it is sort of observational at the beginning, but you have at least 2 sequences that are kind of told with intertitles where you kind of have some, I don't know, subplots, I guess. There's one about a woman, a pro swimmer, who kind of took you in during the shoot, and then you have another one with a guy who worked at a nature reserve. But this is all told via, like I said, via like text. I'm just curious where that idea came from, and then these two, just utilizing these 2 stories as kind of like I don't know, foundations or like bookends, sort of.
So there is, yeah, it was the decision because I just have the voice of Thierry and Véronique, and I film actually nobody over the person that I interview, and I was okay. It's the true voice of the film. It's through them that actually the narration of the film is making. Mm-hmm. So how can I portray them? And I didn't want it to have this frontal portrait, and maybe it was also because I stayed there so much longer, and it was the 2 person which really, I don't know, bring me in the city or show me how you're living here. So it was okay, maybe it could be beautiful to show the kind of intimacy that I had with them, or my link with them, so that then to have a portrait more written of them. And,
right.
Yeah.
And these were 2, I mean, I know the swimmer or someone I guess you met along the way. Was that the same thing with Terry? Were these just people you met while you were making the film, right?
Thierry is is the person which is take care of this natural reserve. So he has also important position in the city of Fos-sur-Mer.
Okay.
But I mean, I also interviewed some of the person from different institutions, and it was the one which was also really interesting of the project and believe also in it. So that was okay. Let's do this something together. And
right. Well, Monica, in your film, you do have like kind of you have interviews with locals and inhabitants of this area. Can you tell me about finding these people, talking to them? They end up eventually kind of singing and giving or reciting poems. I'm just curious about that aspect of the film and how that played out as far as meeting them and then getting them to, I don't know, perform these little, I don't know, soliloquies. How'd that happen?
Yeah, it took a while actually. I was not expecting this because my family comes from there, and it was always really nice to go there as a child and so on. But when I arrived there with a camera, even though I was alone, no crew, nothing, still, it took a long time until they were very suspicious about this project. And it's funny because I was before filming in Cape Verde, in a place where I have no relations whatsoever, and it was a lot easier than there, where like I have family from and so on. Right. But so it was a very slow process, and I ended up then, although it started very slow, then I ended up by having very close relationships with some people, and I ended up living at their house, which really affected a lot the process. And also Maria de Saúde, one of these persons I lived with and is also in the film with the bird and so on, she became like really part of the film crew. Like she was also like, if I was meeting anybody, she would make questions and so on, right. Which I really enjoyed because I really wanted to have a long filming process so that all the ideas I had projected onto this place would be confronted with this reality then. So it was great to have her as part of this, influencing it, and like also taking a bit of control of this authorship through a different way. And then, of course, like afterwards, I take the wheel again in the editing process, which is actually where I'm making the narrative. So it didn't exist until I'm editing.
Right.
You had made 2 questions. What did I not answer?
Well, I don't know. What were the poems and the songs are just things that are just part of their cultural kind of history? There are these things passed down, or yeah, I'm just curious what these are to these people.
So this was especially interesting for me because this was how I got to know this place, through the poems and stories of my grandfather. And these are cultural, it's a cultural part of the life there. And I think it's dying out, just like the people are moving away, but it's still there. And I really wanted to look for people who are still doing this type of poems. Eulalie Welch, for instance, is one of these poets, which is, he raises pigs, but he's also a poet, and he cannot read or write, but has everything is in his own memory and makes the poetry in his own memory. And he has also a very specific type of poetry, which is called decima. And this is regional, but it also exists in other places of the world, but it's very particular to this place. They are also, through this poetry, the narrators of the film. So there is not an external narrator that explains everything. Everything is given either through the images and the editing with some hidden information in it for the viewer to find, but also then just through the voices of the poets or my grandfather in this case also. So only the people who are from there are actually speaking in the film. I think this was an important thing. And then again, the whole film is a pars pro toto. It's a very particular place, but at the same time, this is happening in many places in the world. This loss of rurality and also the culture that is associated with it. So I wanted to have these 2 things that I think live together in the film.
Kyle, your film is sort of the most, I don't know, narrative driven in the sense that there are performers acting out scenarios, although these are real people. Can you tell me about finding the people you wanted to use and then working with them, and then how the kind of scenarios we were watching took shape, if it's based at all in their lives, or you know, just how your dynamic played out with your performers and what you guys were trying to accomplish, because it's shot obviously in a kind of a nonfiction style.
Yeah, they when it, like, I'm trying to think now. So we'd obviously, like, everything was kind of written out, so we'd go into each scene at least with some sort of like an outline. There's a bit of dialogue, things like that, but it wasn't, you know, strict in that sense. And obviously a lot of the time, if there was something that was stupid or that was wrong in there, they would say, no, like, we don't do it like this, you know, we'll show you something else. So like a lot of the places where there's like, we might have had, say, go fishing, or they hang out at the pub, or they do this and that, but they would say, no, here's where we do it, and take us to go, like, where they go fishing, and, you know, take us to all these different spots. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, sometimes I think there were times where we realized that, like, you know, you put the script down and say, we're not going to go by this today. Like, it would be a, you know, problem to get involved here. Like, there was, I think, I don't know, maybe like a week or sometime in the first week filming it. And like, we had done a whole thing of just scripted stuff. So stuff that we thought needed to be really important for the beginning of the movie. And we just battled against it the whole day. And it was just like horrible, you know, like every performance was bad. It looked like a shitty student thing. And then we said, you know, like, we can't keep making it like this. Like, if it's going to work, come out terrible. But I think we realized after that, you know, it could be a balance, that you can still push the sort of story and make sure that something's happening all the time, that we're not just filming nothing, but, you know, really taking a step back and knowing that, in the same way that someone was saying before, that you're going to come back to it and edit, that you can kind of let it go away a little bit and, you know, let things happen. But it's definitely very heavily improvised and based a lot in their own sort of experiences. And all of it's filmed, like, the locations, like that house was where Courtney was living at the time. And so we were thinking we had to rent these places and, you know, dress sets, but have real people in them. And it was just going to be a big mess. So lucky that they were so welcoming and brought us in, which is good.
Right. For night snorkeling, can we discuss? I'm curious how the film was edited together, as far as you guys shot on 2 cell phones, mostly it looks like. Can you talk about editing and kind of cutting between the two phones? And you're obviously mixing a lot of underwater footage with, you know, surface level footage as well. So I'm just curious how you guys went about editing the images together. It has a very kind of a rhythmic feel to it.
はい、その質問の前に先ほどの一つ前の質問でジョーダンさんが2人の監督が自分の映画に出演しているのは普通かっていうような質問をしてくれたと思うんですけれども、それに関して言うと僕は結構いつも日常的に iPhone で日記を撮ってるんですね。でそれで iPhone なんで僕が映像を撮ってたとしても、誰も違和感を抱かないわけです。で過去の日記にはもちろん僕も出てるし吉貝さんも出てる。でこの映画も最初は日記のつもりで撮ってたんだけど、途中からその吉貝さんが撮ってた映像と、混ぜたら面白いんじゃないかっていうアイディアがなんか旅の中で出てきて、でだからこの、映画が生まれたっていうのは結構偶然に近いものだったです。
So, before this question, Jordan actually asked us if, two of us appearing in the film was something that we do all the time or not. And actually, I usually do like a video diary on my phone, almost regularly. So when I do that, when I do the recording of everyday life around me, I often appear in my camera, and also now has appeared in my diary as well. And nice thing about it is if you are filming with your iPhone, nobody around me don't see me in a suspicious look, and it's kind of you can do it naturally. So I started off filming this scenes of like activities that we started to do as part of my diary, like daily thing that I usually do. So I wasn't thinking of making this into an actual film. But when we started filming, we talked about it and we saw how what kind of film that we had, what kind of shoot we had from the phones, and we started talking. Maybe it's going to be interesting if we mix the footage that both of our phones have together. So that's how we started talking about making it into a film.
それで、編集についてなんですけれども、僕が見てた視点とその吉貝さんの見てた視点っていうのが編集をしながらも僕の中で混ざっていくようにも感じていて、でそれがその一つのポイントとしてあって、でもう一つそれから僕も吉貝さんも撮影の時には気づいてなかった映像っていうのがその素材の中にあるっていうことに気づいたんです。でそれは僕たちがカメラの画面から目を離している間もカメラは映像を撮影し続けてるから見てなくても映像ができてくるんですね。でそれ僕はこれをそのカメラのそのものの視点だと思っていて、で今回そういった映像も積極的に取り入れていきました。
And as I was editing, I felt as if my point of view and Nao's point of view were getting mixed up. And I also realized that there were images that neither I nor Nao had noticed when we were shooting, because we would have the iPhone camera on for all the time, and while we are not like looking away from the camera still continues to capture the images. And I think of this as the perspective of the camera itself. It's not my eyes or Nao's eyes, but it's camera's eye. So I thought it would be interesting to actively incorporate such images that we weren't even aware of when we were shooting.
まだ大丈夫？ちょっと長いかな。
ちょっと長い、大丈夫。でも実際本当に私が撮ってる時はもう iPhone と光だけですごく本当にプランクトン、本当は魚を撮ろうと思ってたんだけど、もう 波の中に入っただけでたくさんのおびただしい数のプランクトンがいて、本当に宇宙みたいに見えたんですよね。で、私はそれに夢中で、で、それを中本くんが傍から見ていて、ずっと撮ってたんですけど、私は自分がそんな風に興奮してるなんて思ってもみなかったけれども、こういう風に中本くんを見てて、二人の視点が混ざっていくんだなって完成形を見たときにすごく面白いなと思いました。
So when I was in the water, I didn't even know what I was doing because I would have my phone and the light in my hands, and I was actually looking for fish. But what it appeared in front of me was like numerous numbers of planktons, which appeared like, shining dots in front of me. And this view looked like a space, a universe. And so I was so excited. And so I was so into looking at the world that is in front of me in the ocean. And Hirofumi was shooting me getting too excited about it. So I didn't even realize that I was that excited until I saw the film, the video that Hirofumi shoot. So it was interesting to see how this gaze, the perspective, merged together when we were editing the film together.
Right. We just have a few more minutes. I wanted to maybe touch on some editing choices in a couple other films. Monica, in your film, there's a sequence early on where you kind of like use black frames between some images, and then kind of toward the end, there's a scene where they're chopping on trees. It seems like you're kind of editing in rhythm with the chopping. I'm just curious if you can talk about your editing pretty quickly.
Yeah, so in this place, I realized not much moves. So I started to play a lot more with the editing because of that, I think, in order to have information in the image, also because there's not so much of narration going on, like always through poetry and so on. So I was trying to, with my editing, I tried to kind of give an idea of time, because time felt like it was a very strong component of what felt special there to me. And also is a playfulness that exists in editing anyhow, like the idea of time. So how I try to follow the seasons of the year, or like the cycle of the breads, and like to have all these things like coming into the editing to kind of make a natural cycle, but at the same time to use it as a way of giving information and rhythm. To basically have this playfulness of time in the film, but also the time it takes to grow cork, to have 9 years until you remove it from the tree, or like it was ways to kind of give this several levels of time, perhaps. Yeah. And
Right.
it's just, I like to play with it also.
And Oscar and you guys, as we already discussed, have a lot of different kind of storytelling techniques and aspects in the film. Can you talk about kind of editing it all together and how that worked out?
I think we took turns in editing, and then for me it was more like looking at the big structure of the film, how the narrative started and end, and then I think Oscar was more focused on small moments, how the voice and image will be juxtaposed, or how this will cut to another media or another temporal.
During the edit, I think we found something pretty interesting, that because we have 3 parts that's quite divided. The first part is still photography mainly, and the second part is I think selfie from the phone footage of the traveler, and then the third part still shots. And we didn't realize that, but during the editing, we feel each part has its own temporality to us. For example, the photography part, that naturally when we view the sequence, we realize it feels more like past. And the last part, the still shots in the abandoned city, if when the camera stay steady on the tripod, and it feels kind of present or something maybe in the future, like in between these two. And the selfie footage to us, we feel like it can be something timeless as well. So we were kind of playing idea on these things. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I think we have to wrap up. But I want to thank you all for doing this. I encourage everyone to check out these 5 wonderful films. I think some are available now, some are starting to stream here in the next day or so. But thank you all for joining us, and for everyone tuning in on Facebook and also the Visions du Real forum page. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.